The gunshot echoed through the early morning air, startling Tabitha Morgan from her fitful sleep beneath the tattered quilt that did little to shield her from the autumn chill of 1878. Pressing her back against the rough-hewn wall of the abandoned stable that had become her refuge, she listened intently, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild stallion trying to break free. 3 days she'd been hiding here on the outskirts of Copper Creek, Colorado, surviving on stale bread and water from the nearby stream. 3 days since she'd fled from Vernon Blackwood's mansion with nothing but the clothes on her back and her mother's locket clutched in her trembling hand. 3 days of freedom that felt more like a prolonged execution as hunger and exhaustion slowly claimed her. Tabitha rose shakily to her feet, brushing hay from her once fine blue dress, now torn and soiled from her desperate flight. At 22, she had already endured more than most women twice her age. Orphaned at 18, she'd been forced to accept a position as governess in the Blackwood household. What had initially seemed like providence quickly revealed itself as purgatory when Vernon Blackwood's fatherly interest transformed into something far more sinister. The gunshot came again, closer this time, followed by men's voices. Tabitha pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a whimper. Had Blackwood's men found her? The wealthy mine owner wasn't a man to be crossed, and she had done more than that when she'd struck him with the fire poker and fled into the night. Her gaze darted around the dilapidated stable. There was nowhere left to run. The structure stood isolated on the edge of a sprawling ranch, too far from town to seek help, but not remote enough to remain hidden for long. Blackwood's influence stretched across 3 counties, and his hired guns wouldn't hesitate to drag her back or worse. The stable door creaked open, sending shafts of golden morning light spilling across the dirt floor. Tabitha ducked behind a stack of moldy hay bales, pressing herself into the shadows as boots crossed the threshold. "I know you're in here," a deep voice called out, its tone surprisingly gentle. "I'm not looking to hurt you." Tabitha remained silent, hardly daring to breathe. She'd heard such promises before. "I've been watching someone use this place for shelter," the man continued, his footsteps slow and measured. "Found some small footprints leading to the stream. Figured it might be a child, but those prints are too big." He paused. "I own this ranch, madam. This is my land, my stable. I think I have a right to know who's been sleeping in it." The frankness in his voice gave Tabitha pause. This wasn't the threatening growl of Blackwood's thugs. Still, she stayed hidden, her fingers finding the small paring knife she'd stolen from Blackwood's kitchen, her only protection. "I've left some food by the door," the stranger said after a moment. "Fresh bread, cheese, some dried beef, clean water too. Take it or leave it, but if you're still here tomorrow, we ought to have a proper conversation." The footsteps retreated, and the door swung closed. Tabitha waited, counting to 100 before cautiously emerging from her hiding place. True to his word, a small bundle wrapped in cloth sat just inside the doorway, alongside a canteen that sloshed promisingly when she lifted it. Her stomach growled fiercely at the sight of actual food. For a moment, suspicion warred with hunger. Was it poisoned? A trap? But why would someone go to such trouble when they could simply force her out? Desperate hunger won. Tabitha tore into the bread, nearly weeping at the simple pleasure of fresh food. The cheese was sharp and tangy, the dried beef salty and sustaining. She ate slowly, forcing herself to savor each bite rather than gorge herself sick. As she ate, Tabitha considered her options. She couldn't stay here now that the owner knew of her presence. Yet where could she go? Blackwood's men would be watching the stagecoach depot and the train station. She had no money for passage anyway, and no family to seek shelter with. Night fell, bringing with it a bone-deep chill that penetrated the stable walls. Tabitha huddled beneath her meager quilt, watching her breath form ghostly clouds in the moonlight that filtered through the gaps in the roof. Sleep came in fitful bursts, disturbed by nightmares of Blackwood's hands and the uncertain fate awaiting her come morning. Dawn broke with the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Tabitha startled awake, clutching her knife as the stable door swung open once more. This time, she didn't hide. Whatever was coming, she would face it standing. The man who entered was tall and broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the harsh western sun. He wore simple working clothes, denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a tan leather vest. A gun belt hung at his hip, but his hand remained far from the weapon. His eyes, surprisingly gentle in his rugged face, widened slightly at the sight of her. "Madam," he said, removing his hat to reveal chestnut hair streaked with early gray at the temples. "I'm Hunter Reid. This is my ranch you've been sheltering on." Tabitha gripped her knife tighter, though she knew it would provide little protection against a man of his size. "I'll leave," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I meant no harm." Hunter's gaze took in her bedraggled appearance, lingering briefly on the knife before returning to her face. "You look like you could use a proper meal before you go anywhere. And maybe an explanation as to why a lady in a fine dress, however worn it might be now, is hiding out in my stable." "I'm not a thief," Tabitha said quickly. A smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Didn't say you were, though that knife you're holding looks suspiciously like one from Widow Parker's general store." Heat flooded Tabitha's cheeks. "I'll pay her back someday, I've no doubt." He gestured toward the door. "My house is just over that rise. Coffee's hot, and my housekeeper makes flapjacks that would tempt an angel down from heaven. You're welcome to join me." Tabitha hesitated. The man seemed genuine, but experience had taught her to distrust kindness from strangers, particularly male ones. "Why would you help me?" Hunter's expression sobered. "Because someone once helped my sister when she needed it, and because whatever's chasing you has put real fear in your eyes." "I don't cotton to anything that frightens a woman that way." A long moment passed between them, then Tabitha slowly lowered the knife. "I can't pay you, didn't ask for payment." He extended a hand, calloused and strong, "Just a name if you're willing to share it." "Tabitha," she said after a moment. "Tabitha Morgan." "Well, Miss Morgan, what do you say to breakfast? After that, you can tell me your troubles or keep them to yourself. Either way, you look like you could use a friend." Friend. The word sounded foreign after so long alone. Dangerous, even. And yet, as Tabitha looked into Hunter Reid's steady gaze, something inside her, some instinct for survival that had kept her going these past terrible months, whispered that this man could be trusted. She placed her hand in his, surprised by the gentle strength of his grip. "Thank you, Mr. Reid." "Hunter," he corrected with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Reid was my father, and a more ornery cuss never walked God's earth." Despite everything, Tabitha found herself returning his smile with a small one of her own. "Hunter, then." They walked together across the dew-dampened field toward a modest but well-maintained ranch house nestled against the backdrop of distant mountains. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. A pair of dogs raced out to greet them, circling Hunter's legs before cautiously approaching Tabitha, tails wagging in tentative friendship. "That's Jasper and Scout," Hunter said, patting the larger dog's head. "Best cattle dogs in the territory, though they're shameless beggars at mealtime." As they neared the house, Tabitha's steps slowed. Through the windows, she could see a woman moving about the kitchen. "Your wife?" she asked, sudden worry replacing her fragile hope. A wife might not welcome a strange, disheveled woman in her home. Hunter shook his head. "Mrs. Abernathy. Widow who keeps house for me since my mother passed. She's got 3 grown sons over in Silverton, but she says one day of their company is enough to send her back here for a month of peace." The kitchen was warm and welcoming, filled with the aroma of coffee and freshly cooked food. "Mrs. Abernathy," a plump, silver-haired woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, barely batted an eye at Tabitha's appearance. "About time you brought her in," she said to Hunter, gesturing Tabitha toward a chair at the sturdy oak table. "Poor thing's been hiding in that drafty old stable for days. I told Hunter yesterday to invite you in, but he said you needed to come of your own accord." She set a plate heaped with flapjacks before Tabitha. "Eat up, child, you're thin as a rail." Tabitha looked from Mrs. Abernathy to Hunter in surprise. "You knew I was there before yesterday." Hunter poured coffee into 3 mugs. "Found signs of someone the day after you arrived. Wasn't hard to figure out you were running from something, or someone." His gaze was steady. "Whoever it is, they came asking after you in town 2 days ago, offering a reward." Tabitha's hand froze halfway to her mouth, her appetite vanishing. What did you tell them? Nothing. Wasn't my business to tell them anything. He sipped his coffee. Still isn't, unless you want it to be. Mrs. Abernathy clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Hunter Reid stopped dancing around the subject. The poor girl's terrified. She turned to Tabitha. He sent them packing, dear. Told them he hadn't seen hide nor hair of any young woman, and if they didn't have legitimate business in Copper Creek, they could move along. Relief washed over Tabitha, so intense she felt light-headed. Thank you, she whispered. Hunter shrugged, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. Like I said, not fond of men who put that kind of fear in a woman's eyes. He hesitated. But they'll be back. Men like that always come back. I know. Tabitha stared down at her plate. I won't bring trouble to your door. I'll leave today. And go where? Mrs. Abernathy demanded. With no money and those men searching for you. Don't be foolish, child. Hunter set down his mug. Mrs. Abernathy's right. Leaving now would be dangerous. I've got a spare room. You're welcome to it until we figure something out. Tabitha looked between them, overwhelmed by their kindness yet still wary. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because it's the right thing to do, Hunter said simply. And because everyone in these parts knows Vernon Blackwood is a snake in gentleman's clothing. Tabitha stiffened. How did you small town? Hunter explained. Word travels. When his men came looking, they weren't exactly subtle about who sent them. His expression darkened. Blackwoods had 3 wives, each younger than the last. 2 died under questionable circumstances. The 3rd fled back east after less than a year. Now he's got his eye on a new prize, I take it. Tabitha's hands trembled around her mug. I was his children's governess. After his 3rd wife left, he said I would make a suitable replacement. When I refused, he wouldn't let me leave. Said I owed him for his generosity in taking in an orphan. Mrs. Abernathy muttered something under her breath that sounded decidedly unladylike. 3 nights ago, he came to my room, Tabitha continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I struck him with a fire poker and ran. I stole money from his desk, not much, but enough to be called theft. He'll have me arrested if they find me. Hunter's jaw tightened. No, he won't. You don't understand. He owns half the businesses in the county, including the bank. The sheriff is his cousin. Not in this county, Hunter said firmly. Sheriff Williams is a good man who doesn't take kindly to Blackwood's type, and Judge Patterson even less so. He leaned forward. Stay here, Miss Morgan, at least until we can ensure your safety. Tabitha looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of deceit or hidden motives. She found none, only a steadfast resolve that stirred something long dormant within her. Hope. All right, she said finally. But only until I can find work and move on. I won't be a burden. Nonsense, Mrs. Abernathy said briskly. This house could use a young woman's touch. Hunter's been living like a bachelor too long, even with my help. She began clearing the dishes. Now let's see about getting you some proper clothes and a hot bath. Can't have you running around in that torn finery. As Mrs. Abernathy bustled about, making preparations, Hunter caught Tabitha's eye across the table. You're safe here, he said quietly. I give you my word. For the first time in years, Tabitha allowed herself to believe such a promise might actually be kept. The hot bath was a luxury Tabitha had nearly forgotten. She soaked in the copper tub placed behind a screen in the spare bedroom, washing away days of grime and fear with Mrs. Abernathy's lavender-scented soap. The older woman had provided clean clothing, simple but well-made dresses that had belonged to Hunter's mother, carefully preserved in a cedar chest. She was about your size, Mrs. Abernathy explained as she helped Tabitha dress. Hunter's kept her things all these years. Says he was saving them for someone who needed them, though the good Lord knows I've tried to get him to donate them to the church charity. The dress was of sturdy blue cotton, practical for ranch life but feminine enough to make Tabitha feel human again. Mrs. Abernathy insisted on brushing out her long auburn hair, tusking over the tangles. Such beautiful hair, she remarked, like burnished copper in the sunlight. No wonder that devil had his eye on you. Tabitha flinched at the reminder, and Mrs. Abernathy immediately softened her tone. There now, child. That's behind you. You focus on healing and getting your strength back. The days that followed fell into a surprisingly comfortable routine. Tabitha insisted on earning her keep, helping Mrs. Abernathy with household chores and learning to cook Western-style meals that were a far cry from the formal dinners she'd overseen in Blackwood's mansion. The physical labor was therapeutic, giving her less time to dwell on her fears. Hunter was often busy with ranch work, leaving at dawn and returning at dusk, his clothes dusty and his face wind-burned. But he always made time to join them for supper, listening attentively as Tabitha gradually shared more of her story, her childhood in Boston, her parents' death from influenza, her journey west as a governess seeking employment. "How did you end up here?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "This land, I mean." Hunter leaned back in his chair, stretching his long legs before him. "Came west after the war, fought for the Union, saw things no man should see. Couldn't settle back into city life afterward." He gazed out at the sprawling landscape. "Worked as a cowhand for a few years, saved every penny. Then this place came up for sale when old man Fletcher died without heirs. Wasn't much then, rundown cabin and a few hundred acres of overgrazed land. But it was mine." "You've made something impressive of it," Tabitha observed, genuinely admiring the well-ordered ranch with its sturdy buildings and thriving cattle. Hunter's smile was modest but pleased. "Took 10 years of backbreaking work, worth every blister and broken bone, though." He glanced at her. "What about you? Before Blackwood, what were your dreams?" The question caught Tabitha off guard. Dreams? When had she last allowed herself such luxury? "I wanted to be a teacher," she admitted. "A real one, not just a governess. With my own classroom full of children eager to learn." "Why didn't you?" "No formal training, and a woman alone." She shrugged. "Survival came first." Hunter nodded, understanding in his eyes. They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged, brilliant against the velvet sky. "I'll be going into town tomorrow," Hunter said eventually. "Need to speak with Sheriff Williams about Blackwood's men. They've been spotted again, asking questions." Fear clutched at Tabitha's heart. "Perhaps I should leave. Your kindness has already put you at risk." "Running isn't the answer," Hunter said firmly. "Blackwood isn't the only power in these parts. It's time we pushed back." The determination in his voice gave Tabitha courage, but also awakened a different kind of anxiety. In the 2 weeks she'd been at the ranch, she'd grown increasingly aware of Hunter as a man, his quiet strength, his thoughtfulness, the way his rare smile transformed his serious face. Such awareness was dangerous, she knew. Her position was precarious enough without complicating it with inappropriate feelings. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything you've done." Hunter's gaze lingered on her face, something unreadable in his expression. "You don't need to thank me for basic human decency, Tabitha." The sound of her name on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Nevertheless," she insisted, "you've given me shelter when I had nowhere else to go, and you've brought life back to this house," he replied. "It's been too quiet here since Mother passed. Mrs. Abernathy's happier with you around, the dogs too," he paused, "and so am I." Before Tabitha could respond to this surprising admission, he stood. "Best get some rest. Dawn comes early on a ranch." She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the lamplight from the kitchen window, and wondered what it might be like to belong somewhere again, to belong with someone like Hunter Reid. The following day, true to his word, Hunter rode into town. Tabitha spent the morning helping Mrs. Abernathy with laundry, both women working in comfortable companionship as sheets and clothing flapped on the line in the autumn breeze. "He's sweet on you, you know," Mrs. Abernathy said suddenly, pinning a shirt with practiced efficiency. Tabitha nearly dropped the basket of clothespins. "I'm sure you're mistaken," the older woman snorted. "I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. He's merely being kind. Hunter Reid is always kind, that's his nature. But there's more than kindness in his eyes when you're around." Mrs. Abernathy gave her a shrewd look. "Question is, how do you feel about him?" Tabitha busied herself with a pillowcase, avoiding the woman's gaze. "I'm in no position to feel anything. I'm dependent on his charity." "Bah." "That's not what I asked." Mrs. Abernathy's tone softened. "Life's too short for dancing around matters of the heart, child. Especially out here where tomorrow isn't guaranteed." Before Tabitha could formulate a response, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. 3 men on horseback were coming up the long drive to the ranch house, dust billowing behind them. Mrs. Abernathy squinted against the sun. "That's not Hunter." Alarm sharpened her voice. "Get inside, Tabitha, now." Heart pounding, Tabitha abandoned the laundry and hurried into the house. Through the window, she watched Mrs. Abernathy march toward the approaching riders, her spine straight as a ramrod despite her age. The men reined in their horses, and Tabitha's blood ran cold as she recognized the lead rider, Silas Porter, Blackwood's overseer and the man who had caught her fleeing that terrible night. "We're looking for a young woman," Porter's voice carried clearly. "Auburn hair, green eyes. Answers to Tabitha Morgan. She's wanted for theft and assault." "No women here but me," Mrs. Abernathy replied coldly, "and I'd thank you to leave my property." "This is the Reid Ranch," Porter said. "We'd like to speak with Mr. Reid. He's not here. And this may be his ranch, but I've been housekeeper here for 15 years, which makes it my home. Now state your business or leave." Porter dismounted, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "We have reason to believe the woman we seek is hiding here. We'll need to search the premises." "You'll do no such thing without a warrant," Mrs. Abernathy declared, standing her ground despite being dwarfed by the men. "Sheriff Williams doesn't take kindly to trespassers." Porter's face darkened. "We're not in Williams's jurisdiction, and Mr. Blackwood's authority means nothing here," a new voice interrupted. Hunter appeared from the direction of the barn, rifle in hand. He must have returned by the back trail and spotted the riders. "Mrs. Abernathy asked you to leave. I suggest you do so." Porter's hand tightened on his gun belt. "We're looking for a criminal, Reid, a thief who stole from Mr. Blackwood." "Is that so?" Hunter's voice was dangerously calm. "Funny thing about theft, it's usually taking something that doesn't belong to you, like a person's freedom." "The woman is Mr. Blackwood's employee. She violated her contract." "Contracts don't include a man forcing himself on a woman," Hunter replied, his rifle steady. "Now get off my land before I forget my manners." The 2 men stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Then Porter sneered. "We know she's here, Reid." "This isn't over." "Yes," Hunter said quietly. "It is." Porter mounted his horse, his eyes cold. "Blackwood won't forget this interference." "Neither will I," Hunter promised. "Now ride out." The 3 men wheeled their horses around and galloped away. Only when they were out of sight did Hunter lower his rifle. Mrs. Abernathy hurried to his side. "Are you all right?" she asked. Hunter nodded, his expression grim. "Where's Tabitha?" "Inside," Mrs. Abernathy replied. "Scared half to death, I imagine." Hunter strode toward the house, Mrs. Abernathy following. Tabitha met them at the door, her face pale but composed. "They know I'm here," she said quietly. "They suspect," Hunter corrected. "They don't know for certain." He set his rifle aside. "I spoke with Sheriff Williams in town. He's agreed to help, but his jurisdiction only extends so far. Blackwood has friends in high places." "What do we do now?" Mrs. Abernathy asked. Hunter looked at Tabitha, his eyes serious. "That depends on what you want to do. We can try to arrange passage east for you, get you far from Blackwood's reach. Or, Tabitha prompted when he hesitated, or we fight back, expose him for what he is." Hunter ran a hand through his hair. "While I was in town, I met others who have suffered at Blackwood's hands. Former employees, business rivals he's ruined, even the doctor who attended his second wife's accidental death. They're afraid to speak out alone, but together. Hope and fear warred within Tabitha. Would it work? He's so powerful." "No man is above the law," Hunter said firmly. "Not even Vernon Blackwood." Tabitha took a deep breath, finding strength in Hunter's steady gaze. "Then we fight." The next 2 weeks were a flurry of clandestine activity. Hunter rode frequently to town, meeting with Sheriff Williams and others willing to stand against Blackwood. Tabitha wrote out her account of Blackwood's behavior, a document that would join others in building a case against the mine owner. Through it all, Hunter ensured the ranch remained secure. He hired additional hands, ostensibly for the fall roundup, but Tabitha noticed they all wore sidearms and took turns patrolling the property. "Blackwood won't give up easily," Hunter explained one evening as they sat in the study, going over her written testimony. "He's a man used to getting what he wants. I'm beginning to understand that not all men are like him." Tabitha said softly, her eyes meeting Hunter's across the desk. Something flickered in his expression, a warmth that made her heart quicken. I should hope not. Their hands lay inches apart on the desktop. Slowly, hesitantly, Tabitha reached out, her fingers brushing against his. I've never properly thanked you for all you've done. Hunter turned his hand, capturing hers. You don't owe me thanks, Tabitha, or anything else. I know, she smiled. That's precisely why I want to give it. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken feelings. Hunter rose, still holding her hand, and drew her to her feet. They stood facing each other, close enough that Tabitha could feel the warmth radiating from him. If circumstances were different, he began, his voice rough with emotion. They are different, Tabitha interrupted. You made them different when you offered me shelter, when you treated me with respect instead of as property to be claimed. Hunter's free hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as a summer breeze. I never expected to find someone like you, not here, not after everything. Nor I you, she whispered. He leaned forward, his intention clear, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Tabitha closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened into something that stole her breath and set her heart racing. When they finally parted, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. I want you to stay, he admitted. Not out of necessity or fear, but because you want to. Because perhaps someday you could see this place as home. Tabitha's hand rose to his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. I already do. Their moment of connection was shattered by the sound of galloping hooves approaching the house. Hunter tensed, reaching for his gun belt hanging by the door. Stay here, he ordered, his expression shifting from tenderness to alertness in an instant. Hunter, please, Tabitha. She nodded reluctantly, and he strode out to the porch. Through the window, she watched as a lone rider dismounted one of the hands Hunter had hired, his horse lathered from hard riding. The conversation was brief but intense. When Hunter returned, his face was grim. Blackwood's men burned down the newspaper office in town tonight, he said without preamble. Editor Thomas was planning to publish an exposé on Blackwood's dealings, using some of the testimonies we've gathered. Tabitha gasped. Was anyone hurt? Thomas got out, but barely. He's at the doctor's with burns and smoke inhalation. Hunter's jaw tightened. This changes things. Blackwood's getting desperate, which makes him more dangerous. What do we do? Sheriff Williams is gathering a posse to arrest Blackwood for arson and attempted murder. But there's a good chance Blackwood will flee before they reach his estate. Hunter hesitated. I need to join them. Fear clutched at Tabitha's heart. It's too dangerous. It's necessary. Hunter took her hands in his. Mrs. Abernathy will stay with you. Pearson and Johns will keep watch outside. You'll be safe until I return. It's not my safety I'm concerned about, Tabitha whispered. Hunter's expression softened. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, pressing it into her palm. I've been carrying this for days, waiting for the right moment. This isn't how I imagined giving it to you, but Tabitha opened her hand to find a simple gold ring with a small pearl set in its center. Hunter, it was my mother's, he explained. She told me to give it to the woman who brought light back into this house, into my life. His eyes held hers. I'm not asking for promises now, just that you'll consider a future here with me when all this is over. Tears welled in Tabitha's eyes. There's nothing to consider. My answer is yes. Hunter's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He kissed her once more, deeply and thoroughly, before reluctantly pulling away. I have to go. Come back to me, Tabitha said fiercely. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. After Hunter left, Tabitha found herself unable to sit still. She paced the house restlessly, the ring warm in her hand, her mind filled with terrible images of what might happen if Blackwood's men resisted arrest. Mrs. Abernathy watched her with sympathetic eyes. He'll be all right, child. Hunter Reid is the most capable man I know. I can't lose him, Tabitha admitted. Not when I've just found him. The older woman squeezed her shoulder. Then have faith. The night stretched endlessly. Tabitha eventually settled in Hunter's chair by the fire, drawing comfort from being surrounded by his things, his scent. Without realizing it, she drifted into an uneasy sleep. She awoke with a start to the sound of breaking glass. For a disoriented moment, she thought it was morning, but the house remained dark and silent. Then she heard the unmistakable creak of a floorboard in the kitchen. Someone was in the house. Fear froze her in place. Where was Mrs. Abernathy? Where were the men who were supposed to be guarding the property? Another creak closer now. Tabitha rose silently, her eyes darting around for a weapon. Hunter's gun cabinet was locked, the key with him. Her gaze fell on the fireplace poker, an ironic echo of her escape from Blackwood. She gripped it tightly, positioning herself beside the door. Heavy footsteps approached, and Tabitha held her breath. The door swung open. A large figure stood silhouetted against the faint moonlight from the hallway window. Tabitha raised the poker, ready to strike when the figure spoke. "Is that any way to greet your benefactor, my dear?" Vernon Blackwood. Tabitha's blood turned to ice. "Stay back," she warned, her voice steadier than she felt. Blackwood chuckled, the sound raising goosebumps on her skin. "Still the spirited filly, I see. That's what I admired about you, Tabitha. So much more life than my previous wives. Where is Mrs. Abernathy? What have you done to her?" "The old woman, sleeping soundly, courtesy of chloroform. She'll wake with nothing worse than a headache." He stepped further into the room. "Your Cowboy's ranch hands weren't so fortunate. It seems they underestimated my men's determination." Horror and rage surged through Tabitha. "You won't get away with this. Sheriff Williams is busy with a distraction at my mine," Blackwood interrupted smoothly. "An unfortunate accident that required his immediate attention. By the time he realizes it's a ruse, we'll be long gone. I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't have a choice," his voice hardened. "You've caused me considerable inconvenience, Tabitha: theft, assault, defamation of character. The list of your crimes grows, but I'm a forgiving man. Come quietly, and perhaps your Cowboy will live to lick his wounds." Tabitha's grip tightened on the poker. "Hunter isn't here. You've wasted your time." "Oh, I know exactly where Reid is. My men are dealing with him as we speak." Blackwood moved closer. "Did you really think a failed rancher could stand against me? I own this territory, my dear. Every judge, every lawman. Reid is nothing." "You're wrong," Tabitha declared, backing away. "Hunter is twice the man you'll ever be." Anger flashed across Blackwood's face. "Enough of this." He lunged forward, grabbing for her arm. Tabitha swung the poker with all her strength. It connected with Blackwood's shoulder, eliciting a howl of pain and rage. She darted past him, heading for the door, but he recovered quickly, seizing her dress and yanking her backward. The fabric tore as Tabitha stumbled, losing her grip on the poker. Blackwood grabbed her arms, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. "You'll regret that," he snarled, his genteel facade evaporating. Tabitha struggled against his grip, kicking at his shins. "Let me go, or what?" he sneered. "Your precious Cowboy isn't coming to save you, no one is." A metallic click from the doorway froze them both. "I wouldn't be so sure about that." Hunter stood in the doorway, his revolver aimed steadily at Blackwood's head. Despite the blood trickling from a cut above his eye, his hand was rock steady. Blackwood's grip on Tabitha didn't loosen. "Reid. How unfortunate that you survived." "Let her go," Hunter said, his voice deadly calm. "Now or what? You'll shoot me, a respected businessman, in cold blood." Blackwood's arm snaked around Tabitha's waist, pulling her against him as a shield. "I think not." Hunter's expression remained impassive, but Tabitha saw the calculation in his eyes. "The game's over, Blackwood. Your men have been arrested. Sheriff Williams is on his way here now. You can end this without more bloodshed." "Always the honorable fool," Blackwood sneered. "There's only one way this ends." His free hand moved to his coat pocket. "Hunter," Tabitha cried in warning. Several things happened at once. Blackwood shoved Tabitha toward Hunter, momentarily blocking his shot. A derringer appeared in Blackwood's hand. Hunter lunged sideways, pushing Tabitha clear. Two shots rang out in rapid succession. Tabitha screamed as Hunter staggered backward, clutching his side. Blackwood remained standing for a moment, a look of surprise on his face before crumpling to the floor, a crimson stain spreading across his chest. "Hunter!" Tabitha rushed to his side as he slumped against the wall. "Oh God, you're hurt." "Not badly," he grimaced, his hand pressed to his side. "Grazed me, Blackwood." Tabitha glanced at the still form of Vernon Blackwood. I think he's dead." Hunter nodded grimly. Check on Mrs. Abernathy." Tabitha hurried to the housekeeper's room, finding the older woman beginning to stir groggily on her bed. Relieved to see her alive, Tabitha quickly returned to Hunter, tearing strips from her petticoat to press against his wound. "The ranch hands?" she asked anxiously. "Roughed up but alive. Sheriff's men found them tied up in the barn." Hunter winced as she applied pressure to his side. "Williams should be here any minute. I rode ahead when we realized Blackwood had slipped away." True to his word, the sound of approaching riders soon filled the air. Sheriff Williams and his deputies took charge of the scene, examining Blackwood's body and taking Hunter's statement. "Clear case of self-defense," Williams declared after hearing the account and examining the derringer still clutched in Blackwood's hand. "Man was wanted for arson and attempted murder anyway. You did us all a favor, Reid." As the deputies removed Blackwood's body, the doctor tended to Hunter's wound. "Clean shot, missed anything vital. You're a lucky man, Mr. Reid." "Luckier than you know," Hunter replied, his eyes finding Tabitha across the room, once the house was quiet again with Mrs. Abernathy recovered enough to retire to her room with a strong cup of tea. Tabitha sat beside Hunter on the sofa. "I thought I'd lost you," she said softly, her hand finding his. "Takes more than Blackwood and his thugs to keep me from coming home to you." Hunter lifted her hand, noticing the absence of the ring he'd given her. "Did you lose it in the struggle?" Tabitha shook her head and withdrew the ring from her bodice, where she tucked it for safekeeping. "I was afraid he'd take it." Hunter took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. "Now it's where it belongs." Tabitha gazed at the pearl gleaming in the firelight. "What happens now?" "Now," Hunter smiled, the action crinkling the corners of his eyes in the way that made her heart flutter. "Now we build a life together." "What about Blackwood's influence?" "His friends in high places. Without Blackwood pulling the strings, most of them will scatter like cockroaches in the light." Hunter's expression grew serious. "There may be some who try to cause trouble, but we'll face them together. Sheriff Williams has enough evidence now to clean house properly." Tabitha leaned into his uninjured side, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I never imagined finding safety could lead to finding love." Hunter pressed a kiss to her temple. "Sometimes the darkest storms lead us to the brightest rainbows." "That's surprisingly poetic for a cowboy," she teased gently. "I contain multitudes," he replied with a chuckle, "and I plan to spend a lifetime showing you every one of them." The months that followed brought healing and change to Copper Creek. With Blackwood's death, many of his victims found the courage to speak out. His business empire, built on corruption and intimidation, began to crumble under investigation. Properties were restored to rightful owners, debts forgiven, and a more just order slowly established. For Tabitha and Hunter, life settled into a rhythm of work and love, challenges and triumphs. Their wedding, held in the spring of 1879, was a simple affair on the ranch with Mrs. Abernathy fussing over every detail like a mother hen. "Never thought I'd see the day," the housekeeper declared, dabbing at her eyes as Tabitha descended the stairs in a cream-colored dress adorned with lace from Hunter's mother's wedding gown. "That boy was determined to live and die a bachelor." "Lucky for me he changed his mind," Tabitha replied, her heart full as she prepared to join the man who had saved her in more ways than she could count. Hunter waited beneath an arch of early wildflowers, his usually weathered face softened with an expression of such tenderness that Tabitha's steps faltered. This was real, this good man, this new life, this second chance she'd never dared to hope for. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she reached his side. "So do you," she replied, taking in his clean-shaven face and new suit with appreciation. Judge Patterson, who had become a friend and ally during the investigations into Blackwood's dealings, conducted the ceremony with warmth and humor. When the time came for vows, Hunter took Tabitha's hands in his. "When I found you hiding in my stable," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "I thought I was offering shelter to someone in need. I didn't realize you were bringing light back into a house and a heart that had grown dark. I promised to protect that light, to cherish it, and to spend every day making sure you never need to hide again." Tears blurred Tabitha's vision as she spoke her own vows. "You saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You offered me not just a hand, but a heart, when I had nothing to give in return. I promised to love you with the same generosity, the same courage, the same unwavering faith you've shown me. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted from the gathered friends and ranch hands. Jasper and Scout, adorned with flowered collars for the occasion, barked their approval. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with food, music, and dancing under lantern light in the ranch yard. As the night deepened, Hunter led Tabitha away from the festivities, down the path to the old stable where their story had begun. "Why are we here?" Tabitha asked, curious. Hunter smiled mysteriously and pushed open the door. Inside, the once dilapidated space had been transformed. Clean, fresh hay filled the stalls. Lanterns cast a warm, golden glow. In one corner, a small table held a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "I wanted to show you how far we've come," Hunter explained, pouring the champagne. "From hiding in shadows to celebrating in light." Tabitha accepted the glass, her heart overflowing. "You've thought of everything." "Not quite everything." Hunter reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded document. "One more surprise." Curious, Tabitha set down her glass and opened the paper. It took her a moment to understand what she was reading: a deed to a small building on the edge of town. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at Hunter. His eyes danced with pleasure at her confusion. "It's the old schoolhouse. Town council decided it was time for a new, larger one. This one was going to be abandoned, and you bought it. Why? For you." Hunter took her hands, the document between them. "You said you wanted to be a teacher, a real one with your own classroom." Tabitha stared at him in disbelief. "But I have no formal training. Judge Patterson's wife was a teacher back east. She's agreed to help you prepare for the certification exam, and the town needs someone to teach the younger children while the new schoolmaster handles the older ones." Hunter's expression grew tender. "Your dream, Tabitha. It doesn't have to wait." Overwhelmed, Tabitha threw her arms around him, the deed crinkling between them. "I love you," she whispered fiercely. "So much it frightens me sometimes." Hunter held her close, his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek. "Nothing to fear anymore. We're home." And in that moment, in the very place where she had once hidden from a harsh world, Tabitha knew with absolute certainty that he was right. She had found more than safety in Hunter's stable that day months ago. She had found her future, her happiness, her home. The years that followed brought challenges, as all lives do, but also immeasurable joy. Tabitha's small school flourished, becoming known throughout the county for its innovative teaching methods. Hunter's ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, expanding into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Their first child, a daughter named Hope, arrived exactly 1 year after their wedding, followed 2 years later by a son they called Samuel, after Hunter's father. Mrs. Abernathy, who had threatened to retire once Hunter married, instead appointed herself unofficial grandmother, spoiling the children shamelessly while maintaining her iron grip on household management. On the 5th anniversary of the day Hunter found Tabitha in his stable, they stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children play with the newest generation of ranch dogs. Hunter's arm circled Tabitha's waist, drawing her close against the autumn chill. "Any regrets?" he asked, his voice soft against her hair. Tabitha turned in his embrace to face him, noting the new strands of silver at his temples, the laugh lines deepening around his eyes, signs of a life well lived, a happiness well earned. "Only that we didn't meet sooner," she replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Worth the wait," Hunter murmured against her lips. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the ranch in gold and shadow, Tabitha reflected on the journey that had brought her here from desperate flight to profound belonging. She had hidden from a harsh world in an old stable, and a cowboy had taken her hand and offered a new start. But what he had given her was so much more: a love that healed, a family that nurtured, and a home where light would always triumph over darkness. In the distance, Hope's laughter rang out, bright and fearless, echoing across the land that would someday be hers. It was, Tabitha thought, the perfect sound to mark a journey complete, from hiding to homecoming, from terror to triumph, from loneliness to love.